Well, welcome to another edition of Krayden's Right. I'm David Krayden, senior political columnist for the Western Standard, as well as a columnist for Human Events. And I'm really excited about today's show because we've had a really exciting week. In fact, the month so far has been very exciting. So we really want to talk about what's been going on here in Ottawa with the federal government, but we're also going to be touching on some other issues as well that are international. And you notice we're using a microphone today. Yes, by popular demand and by technical demand, we are using a mic. And so I hope the message is that much more clear and that much more understandable as we go through the news and my columns for the last week. My column today, Friday, is about the usual thing that happens every December in Canada. And that's how the federal government, the provincial governments across Canada, and municipal governments as well, are trying to purge the name Christmas from the holiday on December 25th. And they do their best, don't they? Because, I mean, if you have children in school, especially elementary school, you won't find anything that suggests or hints that Christmas is a Christian holiday that has anything to do with the birth of Jesus Christ. And somehow it's only if Christmas is allowed to be said at all, it's about Santa Claus, it's about giving presents, and it's a secular holiday. And it looks like the federal government missed something in their purging of the word Christmas, because the Department of Canadian Heritage had a program called Christmas Lights Across Canada. And it was basically light displays in the Ottawa Valley, Ottawa, and the greater Ottawa area. And they've announced this year, in fact, they just announced today, that the Christmas lights across Canada has been renamed to Winter Lights Across Canada. So they found something that had somehow not been in their gaze in the past. And I find this, well, disturbing. And I'll tell you why. Because Christmas is a Canadian holiday. And the irony here is that it's Canadian Heritage. This is the department that decided to rename this. And guess what? Christmas is a part of Canadian heritage. This country was founded by a Protestant Scotsman named Sir John A. Macdonald and a French Catholic, Georges Cartier. And somehow we've missed this, or at least we've missed this in terms of the federal government. If this is a Christian holiday and this is part of Canadian heritage, and it's completely irrational, because what if we started to secularize other days that are held important by other faiths, such as, let's say, Hanukkah, which is right now, we are Orthodox Jews and other Jews are celebrating Hanukkah right now. What if the federal government decided we can't say Hanukkah because it's religious? So they renamed it to what? Just the Festival of Lights? That would upset and anger people of the Jewish faith who mark Hanukkah every year as a religious holiday. And that's exactly what it is. And of course, there are other holidays throughout the year that the federal government promotes, holidays for Sikhs and Hindus, holidays for Muslims, but somehow they don't think they have to change the name or secularize that. And this, to me, is absolutely outrageous that we are once again doing this. If you recall, in the United States, former President Donald Trump made a big issue of saying it's okay to say Merry Christmas. And you know what? People are comfortable with that, whether or not you're an evangelical Christian, a mainstream Protestant, or a Roman Catholic. This is a shared holiday, and people who have no faith don't really care that it's a Christian holiday, that it is a religious occasion. We see that in poll after poll after poll, but yet the federal government, this Trudeau government especially, has to pander to what it sees as another identity group. people who are opposed to Christmas because it's Christian. This is maddening, of course, because Justin Trudeau, who was raised as a Catholic, somehow is embarrassed about celebrating Christmas because the buck stops with Prime Minister Trudeau with all of these decisions. This is not just a decision by Heritage Canada, it's a decision by the Prime Minister of Canada. And he has, over the years, denigrated people of faiths, especially evangelical Christians and conservative Roman Catholics who disagree with him on the issues of abortion, LGBTQ issues, transgender issues. These are all things that he is in opposition to his own faith on. So Christmas seems to be another one of those. So I want to bring your attention to that and to say it's not just anti-Christian, it's irrational. Makes no sense at all. But so much of the liberal logic is illogic. It's irrational. So I want to run over to another issue, which I think is hugely important right now, and that's the lockdowns in China and how Justin Trudeau reacted to those. He was quick because we have criticized him lately on being very slow on China when it is exterminating the Uyghurs. It is constantly oppressing its own people. Trudeau does not like to identify that. He would not call the extermination of the Uyghurs a genocide, and that's exactly what it is. Even though the Parliament of Canada recognized that, he would not recognize that. So I think he felt a little bit of pressure to come out this week strongly in favor of the protests in China. Why are they protesting? Well, they're protesting against a tyranny, a communist government that forces them to live in a certain way. And for the last 2 years, it has been even more authoritarian. Let's face it, it is a totalitarian government when it acts in this manner. It has literally locked people in their apartments. We had lockdowns in Canada, but you could still open your front door and go outside. Not in China. In cities like Shanghai, for instance, millions of people have been barricaded, locked in their apartments. And last year, a fire broke out last week, a fire broke out in one of these apartments, killing dozens of people. And the Chinese people had had enough. And they have gone onto the streets with pieces of white paper because they're not even allowed by law to protest. But it's a silent protest with the paper. But they are, in some areas, demanding the resignation of Xi Jinping. Takes a lot of guts to do that in China. Doesn't take a lot of guts for Justin Trudeau to stand up and say that the Chinese should be free to express themselves. It would have taken some more guts for Justin Trudeau to meet with the Freedom Convoy when they came to Ottawa in February. And the irony here, of course, another irony, this has been a week of ironies, is that the Freedom Convoy was about lockdowns. They came to Ottawa to highlight the fact that lockdowns were killing people, literally, in terms of people committing suicide, mental health issues, alcohol and drug addiction. And they were also here, of course, to voice their opposition to mandatory vaccination and other issues associated with COVID-19, the pandemic, and how the federal government has mandated various things throughout this whole time. Now, Trudeau didn't say it's okay to express yourself here in Canada if you're opposed to lockdowns and mandatory vaccines. He decided to invoke the Emergencies Act. And that, of course, was catastrophic in terms of the lives of those who were affected. He froze bank accounts. He acted exactly like they do in China. And that's why it's completely hypocritical of Justin Trudeau to support Chinese protests, but to suppress dissent in Canada. That is exactly the same kind of dissent. Nobody embodies the idea, the phenomena of hypocrisy better than Justin Trudeau as a world leader, or as a world non-leader, if we could put it that way. But this is par for the course for Justin Trudeau, and he's of course thinking about a spring election. He's told his Liberal MPs, get ready for a spring election. I'm sure a lot of his MPs are saying, I can't get ready for a spring election until you get the heck out of there. because you are bringing us down. And watch what happens between now and the spring. You will see pressure from the caucus, the Liberal caucus, to have Justin Trudeau removed, but he ain't going anywhere because as a narcissistic, completely egocentric politician, he believes he can win another election. And as I said in one of my columns recently, he deserves to win another mandate, like he deserved to win a Tony Award for his acting. And I tell you, I've never seen a more wooden actor in my life. Every time he gets in front of a microphone and tries to look sincere, he looks exactly the opposite. He can't even feign sincerity. And I don't think he's going to be around for that next election, but we'll see. There's always excitement there. I want to get on to another issue, which is very close to my heart because I think Canada is going down a very dangerous path with assisted suicide. And the frightening thing that happened this week, there was an interview from the Justice Minister, David Lametti, with a publication of the Toronto Star. And Lametti essentially said that if you are incapable of making the decision to commit suicide, to have a doctor assist you in suicide, the state can do it for you. In other words, assisted suicide equals euthanasia. That's been the unsaid thing about this whole euthanasia program, or as they like to call it, assisted suicide program. I and other people have compared the assisted suicide program to the euthanasia program of Nazi Germany. Some people have said that's way too severe. That's far too caustic. It's not Nazi-like. He doesn't want to kill people. Apparently, David Lametti does, though. The way he phrased this, it made the assisted suicide program equivalent to a euthanasia program. And this is a dangerous road to be on. Because as we know, in March, the assisted suicide program legislation will apply to the mentally ill and to minors and to people who are not capable of making that decision by themselves. So what's going to happen? Is the federal government going to intervene? Is the federal government going to mandate whether people should live or die? Is the federal government going to decide who is worthy to continue to live? Maybe conservative supporters won't be worthy. Maybe people who don't agree with liberal values. Maybe pro-life people who Justin Trudeau hates with a severe hatred won't be worthy of living. This is the slippery slope that we have been on now for 4 or 5 years, and it's precisely what people warned about when this legislation was originally passed. And I have found over the years of observing politics that when the woke politicians, we didn't always call them woke, but when the progressives, the liberals, promote legislation and the conservative people, traditional value people say it's a slippery slope and it's going to lead to a situation that is undesirable and authoritarian, that's exactly what it does happen. When we go down this road, we are going down a dangerous path. And that's precisely what's going to happen with this legislation. And we've got to get rid of this liberal government. We've got to get rid of Justin Trudeau, and we need an alternative. The only party that is suggesting will not support assisted suicide, at least in its current legislative format, is the Conservative Party and the People's Party of Canada. So I think that obviously we have a choice there, and we have to make a choice for life, because the Liberal Party is promoting a cult of death, a culture of death and suicide. They're glamorizing suicide. They're promoting it. When we've seen that in recent ads. A clothing company out of Montreal, Simons, had an ad running with a woman who, by the time the ad appeared on television, was already dead of assisted suicide. And this ad makes it look like it's a wonderful experience to kill yourself. This is sick. This is beyond madness. And for the Justice Minister, to suggest this, I have to say he's out of his tree. and should be out of politics entirely. This guy needs to be defeated in the next election, and we need to target this guy for defeat. Because he's the same person who said, if you donate money to Trump-style causes, you should have every reason to worry about the sanctity of your finances. The federal government can reach out and affect those finances, maybe by freezing your bank accounts or by making it impossible for you to access your money, maybe coming to your house and taking your money. Lametti belongs outside of the House of Commons, outside of this cabinet, and we want to defeat him in the next election. There's no question about that. I want to wrap up today, wrap up on the Emergencies Inquiry, which most people think wrapped up last Friday with the appearance of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Didn't. It's been going all week, and what they've been doing is having sort of a less formal roundtable discussion format with people who are experts on the Emergencies Act. And you say, where do the experts on the Emergencies Act come from? Because we've only invoked it once, and it's been legislation for about 30 years, because the administration of Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, started the Emergencies Act as a replacement for the old War Measures Act, because the old War Measures Act was far too draconian for most people. It was essentially martial law. This is a slightly warmed over version of that, little toned down. But the experts are, of course, not without their political reasoning. And so far what we've heard is that we need to have less misinformation during times of crisis. Now, what do you suppose misinformation is for most of these woke experts, liberal experts, and for the government of Justin Trudeau? Misinformation is anything this government disagrees with. Just like when they talk about something that is hateful, it usually means something they disagree with, because these are terms that are so broad that they can apply to anything this government wants it to. And that's where they're going with social media. They want to ban misinformation on social media, and that can be anything they choose it to be. They want Canadian content in the same way they've demanded Canadian content in other areas. And folks, we don't need the government to tell us what can be on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. That should be dictated by the market. We have lots of great Canadian content, lots of Canadian material that's already out there in abundance, and we don't need the government to tell us what to do. So the Emergencies Act, I think if we can sum it up, it showed us a government that was incredibly unable to be empathetic with the people who were suffering as a result of their policies. It showed us a stone-faced Justin Trudeau who sat and listened to the stories of people who were affected adversely, physically, financially, by mandatory vaccines and other COVID mandates. He doesn't care. He had the audacity, no, let's say the gall, to suggest that he didn't want to listen to the Freedom Convoy protesters because they weren't just protesting, they were demanding he obey them. Don't ever demand anything of Justin Trudeau. But the truth is, they weren't demanding anything, except they requested a meeting with the Prime Minister, which he refused. In fact, he jumped town. He left town claiming he had another bout of COVID-19. Never even talked to them. But he smeared them as racist and misogynist. And he's had the lack of ethical and moral substance to sit there while he was being questioned by a convoy lawyer to deny that he called the unvaccinated misogynistic and racist. And he did. And we have shown that before. We showed that last week, and we can show that again. He lied. He did not tell the truth about that. And that's one of the lasting legacies of the Emergencies Inquiry Act so far. There might be more legacies coming when the experts are finished and when the report is released in February. But as we stand right now, Justin Trudeau lied to the Canadian people. He knew it. I know it. You know it. He lied. And that's inexcusable because the Emergencies Act Inquiry was supposed to be about bringing out the truth about what happened, why this act was invoked. What was Justin Trudeau thinking? What was his motivation? He talked about some of that, but certainly didn't talk about all of it because a large part of it was punishing his political enemies, punishing people he disagrees with, punishing people who will not support his legislation and his Liberal Party values. So I'm going to close now by reminding you, please read the Western Standard. It's online at www.westernstandard.news and subscribe. We need you to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best value in media that money can buy. I'm on there every day talking about the things that you need to know, writing about those things. And we've got some great columnists. We've got some great reporting. And you need to be a part of the Western Standard. You need to be a part. Subscribe now. And because I'll tell you this, the legacy media, the mainstream media in Canada is reluctant to criticize Justin Trudeau because he's paying their bills. He's subsidizing the mainstream media. CBC gets 100% subsidy, but there's millions of dollars being spent on subsidizing the other media, CTV, Global News, Toronto Star. All of these major media outlets are getting cash from the Liberal government, and do you think that doesn't influence how they report the news? Of course it does. And we've got to put a stop to that with another government that says a free press is not a bot press. And that's important to remember because every authoritarian government finds a way to control the press. This government is choosing a twofold process: paying it to shut up or shutting it up through legislation and laws that make free speech increasingly difficult in this country. And we have to turn that around quickly because we can lose our freedom in a generation, as former President Ronald Reagan, one of my heroes, and I'm sure one of yours, reminded us. Freedom is very fragile and it can be lost very quickly. And we need to fight, fight, fight every day. So keep watching this broadcast every week. Keep reading my column on the Western Standard online. And God bless you. And let's keep up the fight. Because when we stop fighting, we might as well stop breathing. And for the Western Standard and Krayden's Right, I'm David Krayden.